who I believe that you were going to take the lead here, at least at first, Oscar, in attempting to make some contacts inside of the facilities.
Yeah, I mean, if they kind of, he would, in things pertaining to training, I expect kind of like by this point, Fortune and Oscar trade stories and goals and such,
Sure.
So saying like, yeah, I want at some point on the ship, probably he would have mentioned like, Natalia scares the bejesus out of me. I need to find it. I need to find a meta scion to help me train.
I really hope he said bejesus too.
Yeah, he doesn't know what it means.
Just don't say it too
other
loud.
People say it in context, and
it just seems like the right context to say it. He says it louder with more inflection than the rest of the sentence.
Like he knows what the word is and how to use it, but he's not comfortable with it.
Yeah, right.
Looking
Exactly.
for confirmation from other people that he said it correctly.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Sorry, continue.
I like how it's made fun of Oscar Day. That feels great.
I know. I'm sorry.
I started the ball rolling earlier.
I mean, yeah, no, man, you're not gonna live that one down. I'm gonna just talk about giant buildings all of the time.
So where are we bringing her? To the only building you can see from the other side of the planet.
Yeah, your team tactician.
Yeah, that worries me a bit.
The 8-story tall stone fucking fortress on the horizon.
I like to believe that Oscar was actually trying to make a joke, like trying to be funny, and everybody just like looked at him like,
yeah, let's roll with that. Like,
yeah, I like it.
The crew just didn't realize that he was doing his deadpan thing.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Cool.
You've
Great.
been watching too much stand-up. You're trying out new techniques. It's not working.
Exactly.
So yeah, he would have said like, I noticed we walked through sort of an academy. Surely I could find someone here that perhaps I could sneak in a training session with. I don't know how long we're going to be here for, but it seems it would be foolish not to look.
All right, maybe we could kidnap somebody and you get all the trainings for free.
We do love kidnapping, don't we?
It's true. It's true.
I would.
So what's the tactic here, Oscar? Are you going to like do the covert ops thing where like you listen in on conversations to see where the things are, or are you gonna like go
he's just gonna go find
routes?
Like it. I have to expect in a setting like this, there's got to be some sort of like, some sort of campus library or like study spot with a coffee shop attached to it. Okay. Something like that. He's just gonna go straight up to students and say like, "Hey, we're off-world. Where do you all train?"
Sure, that seems like the greatest approach.
He's he's not gonna fuck around with.
Sure. So you can tell very quickly that as you're kind of walking through and looking for like the social spots, right? And I'll give you this information too, which is another route should you choose to take it. There are multiple throughout the halls. This is very clearly an open campus, first of all. You're kind of able to walk anywhere. You don't see security. Nobody's stopping you. There's no signs that say authorized access only, except for on certain things, obviously. So it's very kind of just like meander about and figure out what's going on. And you do walk by quite a few, and I'm just telling you this because this is the option that I had for you, but you can totally do it whatever way you want. You do walk by quite a few information boards that have listings on them, like, Amphitheater A is hosting this speaker at this time. Amphitheater C will have this class because it's been moved out of the Eastern Wing for contamination hazard or whatever, right? Like those signs are up everywhere, mostly for the students, but since they're just up everywhere, you can totally go do some research and see if you can identify anything that might seem interesting. In addition to the coffee shop extravaganza where you're like, hey, where do you hit stuff with telekinesis?
I don't think it would have been quite that, but yes.
Yeah, so
this is I mean, not everyone here is psychic, right? Like,
so
this
that's the other
part
thing.
Of the university.
Correct. Yeah, you are 100% correct. Not everybody.
I was under the assumption it would be easy enough to kind of like pick a target that I could speak with based on, you know, some aspect that I noticed, or who knows, maybe I see somebody like practicing their juggling with telekinesis,
right.
like that guy.
That
everyone knows.
You want to buy that guy playing a guitar?
Playing hacky sack with his telekinesis.
I was gonna say playing a guitar with his telekinesis.
Sure. Like, I mean, I'm not.
Sure.
I didn't mean quite that I was going to be that ungraceful or like belligerent about finding.
Sure. Yeah, no. And that's totally a thing that you can do, absolutely. And notably, not everybody here is a psychic. It's actually a little bit less common in other academies to accept non-psychics, but the deal with Aparajita is, with Psionics being worshipped, it's good to teach about it, right? Like, it's good to be able to know about the thing that you worship, right? The thing that you are told is above all and beyond all the best thing to do. And so, like, because of the atmosphere of this planet, not the physical atmosphere, but the social atmosphere of this planet, that's a thing that, like, may actually be harder than Oscar thinks, because anyone displaying openly psionics will either be reprimanded for using their gift for, like, using the gift, right? Because they call it the gift. Using the gift, like, not studiously, not in worship, using it meaninglessly. So that's like a concern, right? Like, on this planet. And so maybe you kind of realize that a lot of these people here, if they are psychic, they either don't like to advertise it because they don't like to be treated differently, or if they do advertise it, they are, like, blessing people in the hallways, right? And, like, doing minor works of quote unquote miracle with their gift, right? Like, the meaningless use or the arbitrary use of the gift is probably not something that is looked well upon on this planet. So you probably will not find anyone juggling balls or playing a guitar or, etc. ad nauseum with their psionics. It's actually probably way more reserved than you're expecting. And so I think that's probably a good scene, right? Of you, like, walking around, you go into a coffee shop and you don't, like, it's not as obvious, because on Raimondi, it's kind of an everyday affair, right? Like, people do their jobs with telepathy. Like, cooks will cook with telepathy, right? Like, it's an everyday use. Like, you use it to chop carrots while you're making the rest of the stew. Like, that's a normal thing on Raimondi. Here, though, it's like the opposite, right? Using it for meaningless, for arbitrary needs is actually, like, very bad.
So nothing jumps out at us.
Correct, but you can still make a roll to see if you can identify signs of somebody being a psychic or something like that. It's going to be a perception roll based on wisdom.
Well, since Fortune and I are just gallivanting around, I would, ask him.
Sure.
Since I filled him in, I would most certainly ask him for help identifying, like, maybe it's something silly, like maybe there's a poster tacked on a signboard or something for, like, a class or for like volunteering opportunities or something like that.
Right. So this one I won't give 2 rolls for because it's not really an individual thing, because you could explain to Fortune what you're looking for, but he's not going to know like exactly what he's looking for.
Oh, but could he assist?
Absolutely. So Fortune, make a perception check based on wisdom. If you get an 8 or higher, you can have a +1. Oscar. No.
So close.
So you do not get a +1, but you do have to roll an 8 or higher yourself. Hey, you nailed it. Well, I mean, nailed it, quote unquote.
Right on the money.
Yeah, and so I think the right on the money success here is the obvious ones, right? Like, you see multiple people who are going by and, like, probably, like, for example, like, carrying a bunch of their friends' stuff with telepathy, right? Like, doing acts of kindness and doing outward acts of mercy and you know, being devout with their psionics. Probably not the exact person you want to see, but that is what is the most obvious option to you is what you're able to see. But because you did get at least a success, and that's kind of obvious to everybody, probably on that signboard that I talked about earlier, you spot that there is a guest speaker that is not like part of a class. It is advertised as like a member of the Holy Family Protestant Christian Church, but a guest speaker, like maybe like in fact it probably says his name. It probably says Missionary Stanislav is his name. And Missionary Stanislav is, and this is how it describes him, let me get this exact wording here correct. A professor of psychic theory and practical application.
That sounds about right, huh?
Is what he is.
Okay.
Yep, professor of psychic theory and practical application. It also says, like, in fact, after his name, it says, yeah, good. Actually, I have a character sheet for him. I'm not going to forget this.
Is there any, yeah, thanks, Meg. Name and chat.
Hey, I'm trying.
Yeah.
Totally.
Is there, okay, so 1, is the poster up to date?
So,
like, is this something that
it says it is in? It says it starts in about an hour, and it's in one of the auditoriums.
Oscar will be attending this.
Okay, yeah, and it is open too, right? Like that's the specific thing.
I don't know if that's for. So he, Oscar turns to Fortune and he says, "I don't know that this is quite your thing. Would you like to come along?"
Sure. I got nothing better to do.
I will not be offended if you leave early.
Yeah. Where else am I going to go? And I start walking off towards the auditorium.
Yeah, sure. Tupolev.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Indeed. So Professor Tupolev Stanislav is the guest speaker. And right behind his name, too, in, like, parentheses, it says alumni. So he's clearly, like, a former student, probably raised here. You know, if he went to this academy, they probably, they do accept, like, all comers, but, like, they expect you to be Holy Family Protestant Christian if you come here as well. So yeah, no, that's the guest speaker that is in attendance in about an hour. So we can fast forward to that moment where you guys maybe like have to check a bunch of maps and stuff, and maybe you have to ask around where auditorium. It's actually auditorium D Delta, and eventually you guys make your way there, and you show up appropriately early, I'm sure. And as you walk in from the outside...
You know Oscar likes to be punctual.
Yes, exactly. As you walk in from the outside, you kind of open up and the wind blows in the door a little bit, and a little bit of, flurried snow flies in. And you can see the auditorium is set up like your typical auditorium. There's probably, 20 rows of seats that are varying higher and higher and higher. And you can see there's a big, projector screen, or a hollow screen, I should say, not a projector screen. There's a big hollow screen, and you can see there's probably about 10 people in here. Already. It's 15 minutes or so before the lecture is supposed to start. And there's probably about 15 people in here, so the seats are actually fairly empty. There's kind of your pick of seats in the building. And you can see there's a man up at the front who specifically is wearing slightly less clothing than everybody else. He appears to be in kind of a thicker leather jacket, but it doesn't have a hood on it. He's wearing wool, a turtleneck, like a wool turtleneck that comes up and protects his neck, and you can see the sleeves poking out of the sleeves of the jacket. And he's wearing, typical attire, pants. They're probably cargo pants that appear to be made out of some thicker material. And then these hiking boots, basically. So he looks kind of like a little bit like a mountain man, almost. But not quite as I think brazen as that. Definitely would blend in a crowd if he had to. Appears to be in his early 40s, maybe. He is Caucasian. His hair is almost all gray, though, and you can see just barely maybe little tiny streaks of blonde in it, but it just basically blends into the gray at this point. It's so little. And he, you can see him. He's got a handheld device out, and you can see him cycling through stuff on the hollow screen, preparing. Very clearly, this is Professor Tuplov, and as you come in, he actually turns around, and he holds up a hand and he greets you, and he's like, "Please have a seat anywhere."
I immediately go to the back.
You just literally make a hard right turn and sit in the last row.
Yeah. I was that kid in school.
Yeah.
I was going to say upper, lower, left.
Upper, lower, left?
Yeah. It's not middle, but
Matt, I have to ask you a serious question. Did you sit in the upper, lower, left when you took classes in college?
Yes.
Okay, I figured as much.
It's
it's your unassigned assigned seat, right?
The bottom right quadrant in kind of the upper right of the bottom right quadrant.
If we divide it into 6 pieces where there's left, right, and middle,
yeah,
and then we divide it into top and bottom, you are at the bottom top of the right quadrant. Is that correct?
I'm confused, but okay.
Yeah, I know. It was purposely confusing.
It's habit. What can I say?
Yeah, totally. So you head over there, and there's no one really sitting there. They're
you don't want to be
under
the speaker's chin.
Right.
You want to be kind of a respectful,
right? Because most speakers do not speak directly in front of them, right? Most speakers actually speak left and then move to right, and then move back to left, and then move to right. In fact, people in the middle get the least amount of face time. Anyway, regardless.
That's okay, next.
We really just spent an entire minute
stuff.
discussing where we...
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm aware.
So yeah, we're both heated now.
Yes. And the other 15 people, there are a couple people who are very clearly, here for the man, not necessarily for the lecture. You know those people when there's a guest speaker. And there's 3 of them that are sitting in the very front row, middle, underneath, as you said, his chin, right? And then everybody else is kind of smattered about the rest of the room, nobody wanting to be too close to each other. A couple of them are very clearly students, right, who appear to be here under force of under duress, probably a little bit. You can see them just on their phones or their compads. They don't have phones. On their compads, just playing a game or something, and just here probably because they have to be, because it's for a credit or something, or extra credit or whatever. And then there's a couple people who are genuinely appear to be interested. Now, the strange part is this person appears to be, for all intents and purposes, like, would be kind of a reveled guest speaker at this, it's an alumni of the Academy. He's a missionary, which are very well respected here. It probably says as well on like the chart you see, it probably says he's also blessed with the gift, right? Like everybody who has the gift is probably identified with that. And so because that in itself is so well respected, you would expect this place to be kind of full. But in the next 15 minutes, there's probably only 3 or 4 more people that actually enter the room. And one of them is probably like an actual like teacher who came in, just maybe they're off and maybe they just want to come see the lecture, or an old friend, or who knows, right? And he kind of sits towards the back so as not to disturb or be in the way because, whatever. And so when the time starts, you can see Professor Tubalov is like checking his watch very specifically. And then when it becomes whatever time he is looking for, which you notice is not exactly the time that it was said to start. It's like 2 minutes and 15 seconds after that time. He taps his watch, or he taps his little wrist-mounted like compad device. He taps it with one finger, and he says, "Welcome, one and all. I am glad that so many of you are here, able to make it today. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Professor Topolov Stanislav, alumni here, and also blessed with the gift." And you can see he like pauses and waits for, I don't know, perhaps applause. Fortune, you probably do the like look around, like, are we gonna clap? Is it?
Yeah. I'm like, I probably clap once, realize no one else clapped, and just put my hands back down.
Yeah, and you can see, and so like the only difference is those 3 people that are in the front, they're like, right, they're like clapping rapidly, like annoying clap, like
Oscar does not clap,
like just the. Like very rapidly, like straining the muscles in their arms because they're clapping so fast. And you can see he smiles like nothing ever happened. He shows his hand and settles down those 3 people in the front, and he said, "Today I will be speaking as to some of my experience dealing with multiple different levels of psionics. This will be a much more informal lecture than I'm sure that you're used to here, if they are still quite as dry as Professor Nachchalan's lectures," and he kind of like laughs. And there's probably like one guy in the back who's like, "Oh, thank God," right? Because like clearly they have that class and they understand. And he begins to launch into this explanation of psychic theory. And Oscar, God, I don't even know what the check I want you to make right now. Let's see here. I want you to make me I want you to make me a Sci-Tech roll, not that. Your profession of badassery does not count here. I want you to make me
roll,
a Sci-Tech roll with intellect or intelligence.
Sci-Tech,
yes. This is application of theory, and remember what the lecture was, right? Application of theory, and it's what did I say? Physical. What was it? It was Sci-Tech theory and its physical application, right? That's what this guy does. Sci-Tech theory and its physical application.
So that was Sci-Tech with intelligence.
Correct.
Hey,
that's a good roll. Wow, so you were actually able
with a penalty.
Yeah, you are not able to keep up, right? Like you are able to understand where he's going, and it's a good roll. And you probably keep up more than almost everybody else in the room, with the exception of maybe the one professor in the back, who this is kind of his life, right? And so he probably keeps up as well. But, like, there comes a point where he begins to go into the theory part of it. and he loses you, right? And then eventually he'll weave in and out, and then you'll pick him back up again. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then like you'll be in it again, and then he'll weave back out.
I think it must be like people who never, like, people who can play the piano but didn't learn to read sheet music.
Right. Yeah.
Like, he can do it. Oscar can do this stuff intuitively, but the theory behind it and getting into like the details,
why it works probably, like it does, is something that is beyond.
Or like being able to speak a language but not read or write it necessarily, right. Or at least not on the level that it's something like that.
Yeah, and it's clear, like, so we think back to his joke that he made about not being dry, and it's certainly not dry. He's a good speaker. He's entertaining. He smatters it with enough jokes and enough inflection in his voice as not to bore anyone. But the part of his speech, and probably why a lot of people did not electively choose to come here, is because the things that he is talking about is like stuff that people don't even mess with anymore, right? Like, either people have seen it as obsolete and moved on, and he's enforcing the fact that, like, no, this is how it works better, or stuff that people like wouldn't, like the conspiracy theory, like, you know, how shit actually works in the metadimensional energies and how they, you know, do all this weird shit and how they can be projected upon physical objects. But the climax of his lecture is thusly. There is a point in which he says, now it's time for the demonstration portion of the lecture. I hope you all enjoy. And he pulls out this, you can see it's like a metal almost cross-like object in his hand, and he holds it as one would hold like a candle or like a dagger, first of all. And he says, now watch very closely. And he holds it out, and you can see him focus and concentrate, and you can see that kind of the space directly above the head point of this cross changes. It's hard to tell what exactly changes about it, but it morphs as if it'd be similar to if you as Oscar, if you as a person had ever seen a spaceship utilizing its jump drive to phase, and what that looks like to the physical eye, right? Like, not what it looks like to sensors, but what it looks like actually looking at that occur. It appears that is occurring directly above this cross head point. It looks like something is like phasing or materializing, or the space around it is warping in some way, that it is just barely visible. And you can hear an appreciative amount of oohs and ahs from that front three people, and more clapping, right? But you, with your 3 roll, understand this to be, regardless of whether or not you were able to follow what he was saying, this is unique, and probably something that does not exist a whole lot of other places. And you can see when he's done, he kind of like wipes the sweat from his brow. He gives a bow, and there are a couple other people, like the people who were here like actually on purpose, begin to applaud as well. Fortune, how much drool has actually come out of your mouth and dripped onto your shirt at this point?
I don't know yet. I'm probably playing games on my compad.
Yeah, right. You're playing Mario 3064.
Yeah.
Duck Hunt, yeah. Duck Hunt survived. Nothing else did but Duck Hunt. That fucking dog, man.
At probably some point, I've come close to pulling out my actual revolver and pointing it at the screen. Like, you're gonna fucking die! And then I put the revolver back.
Yeah.
But you probably missed that too, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. More than likely.
That's not nice.
Hey, we needed to shift making fun of other people tonight, so.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, gotta get it calibrated. Gotta get it re-rifled. So
not anymore. Fortune's like super buff now.
it's true.
Yeah, I got a pretty good upgrade over before. So.
Yeah.
So when he finally completes his demonstration, he gives a bow. There's applause smattering throughout the crowd, and he says, "Well, with that concludes the lecture today." And he kind of like looks at his watch and he taps it with one finger again. And he says, "I am approximately 13 seconds and 52 milliseconds shorter than the last one, so I do have some time for some questions. If you'd like to form an orderly queue right up here at the front, I'll be more than happy to speak with you individually."
Oscar stands up, and then I expect the three
Yeah.
that were in the front row
Yep.
are like poised to swarm him,
Yep.
and he just right in front of them. He just poofs.
Yeah. Roll
Up.
me a mental effect save.
I will do that. I may fail. Nope.
Ooh,
barely pass.
You pass them when they matter.
Yeah.
So you pop in and like as you pop to the front of the queue, right? Like that's where your goal is.
Oh no. Before the queue has a chance to form.
Right. Well, like
as
where
they're
he
standing up.
motioned for form a queue here, you popped
Yes.
there. Okay.
And he kind of like gives the three of them a little side glance over his shoulder. Like he's not going to let them waste his
Yeah.
time.
So there's something that occurs when that happens.
Oh shit.
So
and what is that?
when you pop in, the first thing that happens is Professor Tupolov has a look of shock, but you'll notice he's holding the little cross item backwards now, so the head point is down, and you can see that phasing from the tip of it. And he's holding it kind of like close to his body, almost in a defensive posture. Which may allude to what this might actually do, right? Like what this is designed to do. In addition,
Probably scramble poor Oscar, but
in
yes.
addition, there is another pop, and that professor from up in the back row has also come forward and is like right up on you. He's not a very impressive man. The professor that is like come right up upon you. And he says, "I did not know that anyone here else possessed the gift, at least in your form. Speak your name."
So, Oscar, is this Tupolov speaking to me, or the
Tupolov
other
is not
professor?
speaking. He's still like holding defensive posture, and you can see now that his shock is wearing off.
Yeah.
He's
So-
got like a very determined look on his face now.
Oscar turns to the fellow who was sitting in the back, probably watching Fortune play Duck Hunt on his compad.
Maybe giving him tips.
Yeah. He turns to him and he says, "Oscar is fine. Forgive my enthusiasm. We haven't much time, and I most sincerely wish to discuss a number of matters with our distinguished lecturer."
Sure. So,
And he turns and kind of looks back at the students if that hasn't occurred yet, and he says,
Yeah.
kind of like,
I think
you,
that-
you know how long-winded and you know these undergraduates.
and I think that while you probably expected the three to look kind of like dejected and like maybe put out a little bit, they all look, a couple of them probably, well, initially one of them probably looks a bit frightened. One of them looks like kind of in awe, and one of them is still trying to process what just happened. But they all have like, they've remained in that position where they're like going to get up out of their seat, and like they're not moving. And they can kind of sense like the tension that is occurring now. Fortune, how do you react when this scene goes down?
I'm probably just trying to figure out what people are gonna do next.
Duck Hunt has gone away.
Yeah, Duck Hunt's probably on pause because like if everything works out alright, I'm doing pretty good right now. I'm close to a high score.
Right, sure.
But if things need to be taken care of, I'm aware of what's going on.
Yeah, cool. So Oscar, the professor looks at you and he says, "Very well. I guess I cannot expect everyone to follow our ways, but it would do me some good if you would at least consider not using the gift in the presence of others so gratuitously. It is one thing to possess a gift, it is another thing to use it for meaningless tasks, such as being first in a queue. And it's like being reprimanded by a Catholic priest. That's what it feels like."
Oscar says, "And how about being second in queue?"
And he probably looks at you and he says, "If only I had the hours left in the day to teach you. May you walk in peace." And he kind of like gives you like he gives you the nod, but his eyes never break contact. And then he backs off and he says, "Tupolov, we will speak later." And you can see Tupolov has, during the time this conversation has gone on, he's hidden the cross-like device back wherever he was keeping it. And you can see him, like, he kind of, like, adjusts his turtleneck a little bit. You know, he kind of, like, does the, like, pull-out thing to release heat or whatever. And he says, "Very well. Since you are so eager to ask your questions, go ahead. I will answer them as best I can."
More than questions, but your device did catch my eye.
That is good. It is the epitome of my work. It is my life's work, you may say, besides my devotion to God, of course.
And what discipline has your focus been? I can sense the energies that are being manipulated, but
Well, that is an interesting question, especially from one not familiar with our ways. Disciplines, such as they are known, are fleeting things. People develop differently and with different speeds. In fact, some never develop a discipline, and he puts that in air quotes, at all. Some simply can do certain things, and some not. In fact, the labeling of these disciplines is something I have been fighting against for quite some time. And it probably, and he kind of like looks at the empty-ish room and the people that are like leaving now after that commotion or like whispering to each other, and he's like, probably why I am not seen as such a remarked guest in these halls any longer. Tradition is, as we understand it, very important to a lot of people.
So I have noticed. Well, in your own words then.
It is the raw energy that I can produce, that the gift allows me to produce. Although you ask about my formal training, it is first and foremost in metapsionics. But I have a smattering of other disciplines that I have mastered.
But you channel, if I follow you, you channel the same energy for any of them. It feels the same to you.
That would be an accurate assumption. It is more of a training of the mind as opposed to training of the body. if one believes that their power can be used for any of the abilities and any of the, and again he puts in air quotes, disciplines, then it shall. Now, you must learn how to channel that energy, but as far as developing one specifically, that seems a bit inefficient, in my opinion.
Perhaps as a religious man, you might appreciate a desire to better protect others.
You would not be far off on that. I do have a desire to protect others, but it is the means of that protection that is important, not necessarily the act of doing so.
And Oscar says, the reason I wish to speak with you was to perhaps gain a better understanding of these energies in general. I wish to learn to resist them if one were to turn them upon me with ill intent, so to speak.
I think he actually like visibly shudders a little bit at the thought of that, and he says, "Well, yes, that is indeed an admirable goal, but I must say this is curious. I am, for one, not nearly the best at this job, although my time seems to be better spent doing other things than this." And I think he kind of like looks around and he says, "What perhaps are you seeking exactly? Talk to me on logistical terms. It is clear already that God has gifted you with, well, enough power to overcome mine. I see not why you would need to resist such power if you could avoid it entirely."
And I think Oscar thinks on that for a second, because, well, saying, well, I want to be the best is not really I don't think that's going to win this guy over.
It's probably not a concept he understands now.
Yeah, so he says, all the better to serve with. Why not, why not enhance what we have been granted?
Yeah, and I think he smiles a little bit at that, and he says, "Yes, but to serve God or to serve yourself? That is the real question, but I digress. Feel no need to answer that. Let me tell you something. Here," and he produces like a chip. It's probably about the size of a quarter. And he like flicks it to you, right? I assume you snack it out of the air, and
yep.
And he says, "Take that, place it into your compad. Has details on how you can contact some individuals who may be able to assist you. But be warned. Well, they may not follow the same code of morals that I do. It is, how do you say, an eclectic bunch of people."
I'm familiar with such.
Yes, I have the feeling you might be.
He kind of nods to him and he says, I did enjoy your lecture. Please don't leave your students waiting any longer.
He says, he gives you a nod and he says, "I'm sorry, you said your name was Oscar, yes?"
I go by Oscar, yes.
Indeed.
Forgive me for not making a formal introduction. It's like the typical awkward conversation where you know the other person and you forget that your face wasn't like plastered on posters and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he says, "Very well, Oscar. I wish you good intent, and that whoever may wish to do ill against you, well, they will meet God soon enough."
May I not have to send them to him myself. Thank you again.
And yeah, I think he kind of like, he shakes his head a little bit. He says, "This is one of the sins that we are taught never to do, but I understand its need on occasion."
So to be clear, he was saying like I hope that I can use this to avoid such conflict.
Correct.
Not like I hope that I can use this information you gave me to better kill people.
Right. No, and he may or may not have gotten that aspect of it.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, he's being respectful.
Yeah.
In this situation.
Right. Yeah. You believe that he probably would not, if he had a choice, elect to do that, but he can't control what you do.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's probably a fitting place to leave that off.
Okay, cool. Which brings us right about to sundown. So, Oscar and Fortune, do you guys contact, or should I say, Gogo, are you interested in attending this ceremony?
She
Am I
said
interested?
in chat.
Hold on. Am I
She's back.
interested in what? I just caught the end of that.
Attending the awakening ceremony or the enlightenment ceremony, whatever they're calling it
Well,
these days.
Probably not. However, she also doesn't want to be the only one left on the ship.
Oh, I don't think Boomer wants to go either.
Oh, okay. Then no, probably not. I would stay on the ship.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's probably a moment where you look at each other and you're like,
Hey, it's sundown. Should we go? Well, no. I mean, I'm comfortable here.
I already put my pajamas on.
It's so far away. Yeah.
Cool. Roll me a luck
I'm not gonna know anybody.
It's gonna be awkward.
I require a luck save from you, please.
Great.
Well, she's an expert. That should be relatively.
It's at 14, so...
Oh, it's at 14, isn't it?
Yeah. Experts are actually the worst at luck.
Nope.
Damn.
Hard fail.
You are saved slightly by Boomer.
Hell yeah. I think that's the story of Mario's life. That's fine.
So yeah, you guys begin to like talk, and the day kind of drags on a little bit, or I should say like the sundown kind of drags on a little bit, and you guys are waiting and waiting and waiting, and Boomer kind of like just happens to like be glancing out of the viewport, and it's probably a couple hours after sundown, and he glances out the viewport, and you can see he's like, wait, what's that? And you kind of like walk over, and he like you see where he's pointing, and you can see on the horizon, kind of over this tundra flatland, kind of where the city like stretches over, not quite the horizon, I should say, kind of like the edge of the city where it kind of like stretches over. You can just barely see just flashes every so often. And he's like, you can see Boomer's like squinting. He's like, is that gunfire? And that's a perfect place to take a break.
Good times.
And then we'll go back a few hours and see what's going on during the ceremony.
Yeah, yay.
It's gonna be a quick break,
we get
though.
To see if Oscar caused said gunfire.
It's gonna be a very quick break. Let's be back in like 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I will be back.